Welcome, my loves, to another episode of the If Anything, I'm Everything podcast. It's me, Keisha Chanel, and I really hope you had a great holiday season and that you had the opportunity to spend time with family and loved ones, unplugged and really just kind of in the moment. I just can't believe it's 2023. However, I am super excited about what this year will bring. I think that this is really a really fresh start for me and a really great time for me to seize so many different opportunities. So I'm super duper excited about that. Today, I'll be talking about managing life, as a single mother, father, a divorcee, or a spouse, talking about support systems and what they look like for different listeners and these different dynamics, right? I had the opportunity to do a poll, and it was extremely interesting to say the least. So this, my loves, is the balancing act. So, yes, welcome back. I actually had the opportunity to take a poll. Okay. I asked 5 questions, right? Because for me, I'm always trying to find out, which I understand completely that when every household runs a little different, right? Like every relationship is different, every dynamic is different, right? You have me, a single mother of two, have my sister, a single mother of three. I have friends that are married with children. I have friends that are not married, I guess in a domestic partnership with no children, right? Or I have, friends that have been divorced that are kind of dating right now. So there's so many different dynamics, right? And we all live fairly different lives, work in different industries, have different professions. So, of course, the demand for work and home life is a little bit different. But I find it very intriguing to talk about these things with my friends and family or just people that I meet, because I wonder, like, am I the only one battling, like, the non existent work life balance, right? Like, am I the only one that feels like they've got to do it all, even though they really don't have to do it all? And I'll kind of elaborate on that in a little bit. But I ask these questions because I really kind of not necessarily compare myself, but I just love to get the perspective of others to find out how they overcome certain obstacles or how they deal with certain things, or if they're not able to deal with them, just kind of be that ear, right? Like that shoulder for someone to talk with, to vent with about maybe their frustrations, so that they can kind of work through them themselves. Because have you guys ever been in a situation where you're having a conversation with someone and they're a little bit perplexed about something and they're kind of venting, however, they come to the solution on their own just by talking and being able to have someone to just listen. So I mean, it's kind of a give and take, right? In a relationship, like, yes, I would love to be able to go to my friends all the time and just dish about what I have going on. But I understand 100% that it has to be a two-way street, right? Like I have to be that friend that doesn't mention anything that's going on at times, right? Like I have to be there to listen, to offer, that support for them. And so with these 5 questions, it's just about like balancing life, right? Like how do you maintain in your dynamic and what has worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. And I just asked a couple of questions. I mean, there's probably so many more that I could have asked that, I'll get to talk about on the show. However, with these, I thought it was extremely interesting to see who would really be vulnerable with me and who would still give me that cookie cutter answer, right? And I think that's just a level of comfortability, right? Like, I may not be comfortable about talking about my flaws or the issues that I find within myself, right? Like, I may not have comfort in expressing what I'm really going through at this moment in my life. And that's okay. I think as people realize that so many people deal with the same things, I think we come out of that, right? Like, it's a beautiful thing that I have really great people around me that are honest and, 8 times out of 10 really live in their truth. You still have some people that are, have this perfect, that kind of put up this facade, but there's reasons as to why that happens. But this is a 100% safe zone. I won't necessarily say who I got these answers from, but I will kind of share that dynamic, right? So that you can kind of say, I'm living, with the husband and with children, and this is kind of how we do that. Maybe we can try this, or maybe we can do that. And so, looking forward to getting a little feedback on today's show, but also just kind of sharing these questions and just making that connection with more people on that relational level. So again, I took the realest answers from these 5 questions, and I'm going to share them as well as kind of give my answer as far as how I feel about these questions and where I am at in my life. So the premise, of course, of this exercise was to be honest and vulnerable, to possibly help someone heal, and just to express themselves in a safe space, right? So question number 1 simply was just, what support system do you have in place for you and your family? So for me, this question, and I probably overthink everything, right? Like, this question for me really was about the support that I have for me and my children, right? I am a single mother. I work a full-time job, and I probably overwork myself. I am, again, somewhat of a serial entrepreneur, so I have my own tax office. I help with business formation, with kind of business consulting. I do a little bit of digital design on the side. Like, so there's so much that kind of comes into who I am. And so I myself feel like my support system really relies on, like, my sister. She's here with me, like, literally 10 minutes away. She lives 10 minutes away from me. And I know 100% that because I travel with work, if I need anything, even if I'm not traveling, that she's going to be there 100%. And I pray that she feels that I can be that for her as well. There's just never anything that she can't do, so I'm super grateful to have her, available and willing to be that person without ever really complaining. Like, I've never ever heard her complain, even about helping other people in our family or helping friends. Like, I've never ever helped her or heard her complain. So I commend her for that, and I'm grateful for her. I feel like if my mom doesn't necessarily live here, but that doesn't mean that she couldn't or wouldn't offer the same support. I will tell you, I was a mother at the age of 20. And at the age of 20, you still want to go and party, and you want to hang out, and you want to have fun, and you want to do things. And so I was actually living in Tennessee at the time, in Nashville, and my mother was not there. However, when I wanted to go out of town, or when a big event was coming, and I didn't have anyone to keep my daughter, I would literally call my mom and be like, do you want to come and go to Atlanta with us? So you could keep Jayla while, like, me and my friends went out and partied. And it became almost something that was so normal that, like, me and my friends, we would all be in this hotel room having fun and doing whatever. And then there's my mom, like, the super supporter, right? Like, that would come from out of town just so she could stay with my daughter. And which was amazing for me, right? Because I had somebody that I trusted 100%, At this point, like, my daughter, from birth, I think at maybe 4 or 5 months, she would go and stay with my mom for the summer. So every summer I pretty much had free. And then she would come back home with me through the school year. She even spent one school year, decided she wanted to stay out there, and I let her, and then she came back home. So like my mom has been a really big support. And I think vice versa, right? There were things that happened in our lives at the time when my daughter was born, where she also, I believe, filled a bit of a void for my mother. So I think that the blessing is just all in that support, right? And I think it worked both ways in that manner. But I do feel like in place right now, I know without a doubt that I could call my sister. I could call my mother. I'm pretty sure that I could call my close family and friends, which would be like my mom's sister's children and my mom's sisters, which are my aunts. Like, I feel like I could call them, and we all have a really great organic relationship. Like, there's no drama. It's really all love. And when we get together, we cut up and we act a fool. Like, it's just never ending, right? So I feel like for me, my support is 100% my family. I do feel like I have the opportunity as well to call my son's father. And like, we had this 10-year relationship, and even though we decided to go our separate ways, there's still that, I don't even know if it's respect, but it's still that relationship to where if I called him today and was like, hey, like, he's really my go-to for certain stuff. Like, hey, I got this, generator. Like, what do I do with this? Like, is this going to take gas? Or like, he's that kind of person, right? That I know that I could call that's going to give me the information that I need. That kind of thing. So I do feel like I have that support in that way. So that also kind of works. But as far as like any male support, any companionship, any just real conversation, I just don't feel like I have that, and I mean, it just is what it is at this point in time. Right. So I feel like for me, my support for me and my children relies heavily like within my sister and my mother. So with putting the poll out, asking this question, the answer that I picked, it was for a couple different reasons. Number one, I feel like this person was being authentic, right? And number two, I feel like it's very important to acknowledge the fact that we have men out here that are really in touch with like communicating, with understanding the importance in certain things. And I think that's it says a lot. So the answer that I'm about to read is of a single father. I guess there's a couple different dynamics to this, right? A single father who co-parents, right? That's dating. So, I mean, there's a couple different dynamics. But he stated that his support is his family. He says, I can rely on them to be there for me regardless of the situation without bias or judgment. I instill the importance of family in my child because family is always going to be family, and these relationships are the most important. So I 100% commend that, right? Because not only does he have a safe place where he's able to talk through things, like I feel like not enough men have that, right? Like, I don't care if it's a homeboy dynamic, if it's a brother and sister, siblings, or if it's a mother and a child, whatever the case is, I feel like I have not encountered a lot of men that have that support to where they can be 100% who they are, have honest conversations, but also have good sound advice and support, right? Like, to where you feel like if I say something, they're not automatically going to take my side, or they're not automatically going to just give their opinion. There's no bias. It's just a real support. So that was I feel like the most transparent and the most real answer I received for that question. And so I actually have like, there were actually two for that, but I kind of wanted to segue into the next question, which I feel like is also kind of one of those things where you just kind of want to make things work, right? And so the second question, number 2, is how do you manage work, family, and home? Right? And so this is a very kind of just general question. I threw the general question out and I received a couple different angles on this, but I felt like this angle was the realest. Like, I just honestly, so the answer that I received was from a married young lady with 3 children and 2 stepchildren. Okay. So, I believe she has 3 children, 2 stepchildren, and her husband. So the answer that I received to how do you manage work, family, and home, kind of segued into like the support area. And she simply stated that I always have to think 2 steps ahead. I manage my home life around work and my children. I am often the one away from home. So therefore, I am taking the children to school, coming into work, leaving work, picking up the children, coming home, having to cook, then cleaning up, getting the kids ready for the next day. Then I am responsible for doing it all over again. And so when I read this, I was like, man, there's so much more to that, right? Because if you are the one that's having to make everything work, or how you're managing everything by thinking 2 steps ahead, it seems to me as if you don't really have any support. So I asked that question and she responded by saying, I don't. And I feel like for me, that would just be hard for me. And I cannot necessarily say that I understand what that dynamic is like. However, I cannot see myself at this very moment in time working as hard as I do, being married, but having to shoulder everything. You know, like I couldn't see my husband not working. But then if he's not going to work, I couldn't see him not making sure the kids were, to school, making sure that the house was clean, that the simple things like dishes were washed, floors vacuumed, mopped. I could not see me having to get out here and work as hard as I do and then come home and do all of that, but then have a husband. Like for me, I cannot see it. Again, no judgment. I don't know what that is like, right? Being in that situation where you want to take care of everybody so much that you're okay with that, right? And so I felt like in that moment, it was also kind of giving up that there's just no support there either, right? Like, so do you then go outside the home? Like, is your family your support if your husband isn't? Like, how do you like get from that to compromise, right? Like, I mean, I probably wouldn't even understand like where to have that conversation, but I would love to speak with some more people about that. So I thought that was very interesting. How I manage working home, just to be honest, there's a lot of disappointment, right? I absolutely cannot do everything. So I have to really think about what kind of leads into the next, right? Like, of course, I have to work. Luckily, My job is somewhat flexible to where I can work from home. So if there's instances where I have to take my children, they're having to go to school or they're having a half day or field trips, whatever the case is, my job is for the most part flexible in that regard. However, with me having to travel, it also leaves me away from home, and it also leaves a lot of missed opportunities, right? So that means if there's a volleyball game at night, I'm usually missing it, right? My sister is usually picking her up, my daughter up. So I'm missing it. So there is a lot of I am 100% sure disappointment, because my kids all the time are like, you're never here, or you know what I'm saying? Like you're never here. And I mean, they're rolling with the punches, because this is just kind of what life has dealt us. Like, I don't have a significant other. Yes, I could possibly find another job, that I guess isn't as demanding. However, I mean, we have a certain lifestyle that I have to uphold, that they are accustomed to, that has come with, over 15 plus years in this industry. So I feel like having to manage is just allowing them to understand that everything has a priority. They are the priority 100% as to why I work as hard as I do. However, my presence is most important, essentially when I'm needed. I guess I feel like I pick and choose, and that's probably a really great conversation to have with my kids. But I'm probably really scared of what they're gonna say. I can only imagine, what they would have to say. And I really think I've grown in this regard over the last 6 months, because it was to a point where I thought it was necessary to travel because of certain needs going on within my portfolio. So I'm a regional property manager. So that means that I have properties in multiple cities. So it's a requirement to travel. I have a condo that I Airbnb out. So, that kind of takes my time. It's in Nashville. And so kind of having to do all of that, I now say, I guess I'm just more, how can I say this, more intentional with the time that I spend when I'm away from home. So I don't have to spend as much time away from home, if that makes sense. So I kind of try to manage my workload based on my kids' needs first, right? Like we have this going on, like volleyball, club volleyball is in session. So we are traveling. We are having tournaments on the weekends, the holidays. My son decided he wanted to go to school with his dad. So he's, living out of town. So the travel of getting him from point A to point B over the holidays, so that he has the opportunity to spend time with everyone. It's just kind of one of those things where I figure out what I have to do for my home life first, and then work kind of follows there. And then, my house, I've really made my children step up, because they're 11 and 18. So like there's no reason that I should have to go out and work as hard as I do and then come home when y'all know that I like my floors clean. Dishes don't need to be in the sink. Trash needs to be taken out. Just those simple things, right? Because I feel like that just for one shows just the appreciation of, hey, I know that you work every day. I know that when I ask you for a bag of hot Cheetos and Gatorade, you're going to give it to me. Just the consideration, right, of mom working hard. I'm going to make sure that I at least do this. So question number 3. I asked, who is the disciplinarian, and how does that dynamic make you feel? Because I feel like naturally in a relationship, that kind of automatically, it takes shape. Right? So for me, in my household, of course, I am the disciplinarian. However, I 100% agree with this first answer, and I'm gonna tell you why. I'm the disciplinarian, of course, because it's my household. It's singular, right? This is just me. Single mother. But if I put myself up against my son's father, he's 100% got me beat, and my son probably thinks I'm a joke. And I say that because like me and him have such a great relationship, but it's solely based on like so much love, right? Like to the point where y'all probably think, oh my God, you coddle him, or you are too soft on him. However, I want him to grow up understanding that feelings are okay, and that taking other people and their feelings into consideration is important, right? That empathy, like you have to be aware of the implications of your actions on somebody's feelings. Like it's not okay to just run around treating people however you want to, being disrespectful, being rude to people. That's not okay, right? Right from wrong. Yes, you need to do right from wrong, but he's just a very smart kid, very energetic. And I feel like his father is 100% like Colonel somebody, like barking orders, like everything, voice is always raised, to the point where he's like literally scared to say 3 words to you because you don't believe him, or you don't, so I feel like he's the disciplinarian in that factor. Me, I feel okay with it. However, if I was married, I 100% feel like I'm 100 going to be support, but dad 100% has say so. However, I feel like me and dad would be on the same page, right? Like we would have to be speaking the same language on so many different levels in order for me to 100%, completely trust his leadership, right? And I feel like dad would definitely be the one. It would always be, well, what your dad say? Did your dad say you could do that? Like I just feel like I would 100% use that. So the first answer for this question was as follows. So single father dating, another good one was, I think my daughter's mom would like to think she's the disciplinarian, but I believe my daughter doesn't take her as serious. So when my daughter's mother feels as if she is not getting the results she's seeking, then she leans on me to do it. Understanding kids respond to their fathers differently than mothers, I believe it is a more natural role for the man. So he feels like it's appropriate for him to be the disciplinarian, which I agree. I do agree. And I feel like as women, we are harder on our daughters. But I also like, you want to run the show until you cannot run the show anymore. And then you call me. So I feel like in that dynamic, I would almost say like if there's an issue, of course, you don't want to call for every little petty thing. But if there is a bigger issue, I really think that that's when the effective communication on how do we help her through whatever or help him through whatever issue needs to take place, right? Like I feel like that answer was definitely spot on. I had another one that I really, really liked because, again, dynamics are so different. So this answer came from a single young lady who's dating a male with a daughter. And she states that she is the disciplinarian. And she says she feels empowered by it because she feels like she has his trust and his respect. And I think that is major, right? Because I think that's a really big thing when people are dating with children, right? Like I can tell you right now that my children have probably met 2 men in my life ever. They know my son's father and maybe have met one other guy. Like I do not bring men that I date around my children. That is a no for me, because if you are not here for long, if I'm not sure about you or whatever the case is, like it's absolutely not happening, right? So I feel like that's really important for a person, male or female, whatever side it is that has the child, bringing the child into the relationship, to feel comfortable with somebody chastising and disciplining their child. I think that's major when somebody feels comfortable enough for someone to come in and kind of do that. So I thought that was a really great answer. And I was happy to hear that she was empowered by, the opportunity to be a disciplinarian. So question 4, I asked, what major sacrifices have you made in the last 5 years that you have struggled with or are not completely happy with? And so I already knew this one was going to be kind of tough, right? Because you really have to be honest with yourself, number one, before you can even speak the words to somebody else about what you're struggling with. And so I kind of felt like this was going to be one that I wouldn't get any responses to, because of course I did the poll. You pick which questions you want to answer and, and submit your, send your answer. And so I was kind of surprised when I got this answer. And, it really kind of breaks my heart because we do so much for our children, right? Of course, we bring them into this world, so they're 100% our responsibility. However, I feel like, and I'm not speaking on this one specific thing, but I just feel like so often fathers really have a choice, right? Like they can decide to be in a child's life. They can decide not to be in a child's life, right? And this is, if you are single or if you're divorced or, once the separation is made and mother and father are no longer together or whatever the case is, men usually have that option. Not to say this is the right option to not be around, but it's often, right? Like, it just is what it is. And so for us as women, we take on that responsibility without option, right? Like we carry this baby, we have this baby, we take care of this baby without option. Now, there are some instances, I'm sure, where women kind of decide, hey, my mom can handle this, or, sister can handle this, or whatever the case is. However, just in general, I feel like women don't really get that same option. And so the answer that I received is as follows. Relocating to the state that my child's father resides in has been a struggle for me. I work hard with no family, no friends that are close, and it's lonely. However, it's for the sake of my daughter. So when I read this, I thought, again, like selfless acts from a mother, because we want our children to really have I guess what we think they need is that father presence there. And maybe that is best for the dynamic, right? Like for me, I have to say that I think I am lucky in the dynamic that I have. Number one, my daughter's father is nowhere to be found. We had the opportunity to meet his family when she was 13, so back in 2018. And, communication has kind of dwindled off a little bit, but I've been really thinking about it, and I need to do a little bit more to kind of keep that connection going, right? And so that's kind of one of the things that I've been talking with her about. But kind of from the beginning, he was absent. Well, he actually wasn't, but he became absent fairly quickly. So with my son's father, I feel like the dynamic right now is like we meet halfway to make the if you want to call it a transaction, when we drop my son off for the holidays or when, vice versa. Yeah, like we meet halfway. We get in a car and we drive 4.5 hours to make the drop, and then 4.5 hours back to wherever we're going. And there's never a issue. Like I could call him right now and say, hey, Braylon is wanting to come home, or he's wanting to come to you. Like, kind of tell me what your schedule is looking like in a couple of days. I'm thinking maybe we drive halfway, or I could fly in or you could fly in with them, whatever. There's never any contention behind it. It's always, okay, let me check my schedule and I'm going to get right back to you. And so it's always been very easy for me to co-parent. I just haven't had that issue to where I feel like I had to stay in the same city as him. Even though I moved to Alabama to be with him, I didn't have any family there. My sister actually had moved there, and then she ended up moving back home to Omaha, Nebraska. However, I didn't have anybody there. So I kind of adopted his family as my own. But then when things started to change, it was kind of like, okay, there's really no reason for me to stay, right? And I'm kind of grateful that I did not limit what I was willing to accept from him or what I wasn't willing to accept from him where I stayed, right? Like I couldn't see myself staying there being miserable. Like not at all. And we've just made it work, right? And I understand that that's not always the situation in relationships of the sort, but I think I've been completely lucky. But, we sacrifice a lot, but I think there also has to be that fine line too, to where you're not suffering, if that makes sense. So, I appreciate the answer, the vulnerability. I appreciate the honesty within that answer. And that was probably my best answer for that question. And so question 4 for me, I haven't made any major sacrifices in the last 5 years that I've struggled with. And I feel like it's just my personality. I am such a nothing's going to stop me type of person. Like my mentality is so different. I do not dwell on things. If I make a mistake, I ultimately learn from them. However, I sidestep that. Like I overcome things extremely easily. I am just a strategic thinker. Like I'm a problem solver. Like, so nothing really ever bothers me. So I really can't say that I've had any sacrifices, that, I've struggled with, just leaving was a struggle. I mean, that was about 5 years ago, but I'm not sad about it. I think that it has really helped mold me into the wonderful person that I am becoming. I feel like every day I grow a little bit more. I'm empowered to see other women who are, able to overcome obstacles, and don't let them just stop them, so it's kind of my answer for number 4. And question number 5. So 5 was, what do you think is the key to a balanced life and why? And so I got a lot of answers for this one. So, I got answers again from divorcees, from single mothers, from married mothers. And, the common thing was communication, right? I got communication and respect. Like these are the key things to a balanced life. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, communication. I understand that, right? Like communication, because you have to be able to state expectations, right? If you're not able to clearly state expectations, then how are you able to make decisions for those around you and actually get people to kind of go along with those decisions, right? Like I feel like you have to be able to have that, right? So I got respect, communication. It's like the balanced life is when all the puzzle pieces fit together, right? But they'll only come together if you are in agreement, right? Like you have to have that communication. You have to have that understanding. And I think that's just a really big part of it. I also feel like balance is going to come from when all elements in your life are equal, right? Like, so I say when I'm at home, right? I'm present and I'm aware. When I am at work, I am at work, I am present and I am aware. So I'm actually putting in my time at work, being intentional, right? So that I can leave when I need to leave, come home, and do what needs to be done at home, right? I feel like you have to be able to find that, but I think you also have to set those boundaries, right? And if you can't set boundaries, learn some labor laws, right? Because, I mean, sometimes things are just out of control because people take advantage, right? So I do feel like once you're able to put healthy boundaries on certain elements, then you can kind of start balancing out that life and having the life that you essentially want. And there you have it. So I enjoyed the interaction, doing the poll and really getting to see everyone's different answers and their dynamics, their overall thoughts on just balancing, their home and work life with balancing their family. So I want to say thank you to everyone that participated. I appreciate you all more than you know. I can't wait to do the next one. So look out for that. If you're enjoying this podcast, please make sure to find me on Patreon, Keisha Chanel, where you can get access to all of the podcasts, plus special episodes. Behind the scene videos are coming. Affirmations. There's digital downloads so that you can start journaling, like just kind of transforming your thought process. Future Prayer Fridays, and so much more. So thank you guys all for joining me again. It's Keisha Chanel. So until next time.